This is part 7 of The Alchemist, and I will read it for you in ASMR style. ASMR Katz. Hi, it's me, ASMR Katz, and I welcome you to my YouTube channel. When you put your headphones in, and it is an absolute must, you can hear that this is a high quality recording and the sound is crystal clear. And to make your ASMR experience even more worth it, I can recommend you to check out part 1 until 7 I read from this book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Now we are at part 7. We are on page 116 and there are 180 pages. So there is more waiting ahead. So make sure to lean back, enjoy and listen to the words I whisper in your ear. Also, feel free to follow, subscribe, click on the notification bell and comment that we can have even more personal time together in the future. Next morning, there were 2,000 armed men scattered throughout the palm trees at Al-Fayyim. Before the sun had reached its high point, 500 tribesmen appeared on the horizon. The mounted troops entered the oasis from the north. It appeared to be a peaceful expedition, but they all carried arms hidden in their robes. When they reached the white tent at the center of Al-Fayyim, the wastrels were scimitars and rifles, and they attacked an empty tent. The men of the oasis surrounded the horsemen from the desert, and within half an hour all but one of the intruders were dead. The children had been kept at the other side of grove of the palm trees and saw nothing of what happened. The women had remained in their tents, praying for the safekeeping of their husbands, and saw nothing of the battle either. Were it not for the bodies there on the ground, it would have appeared to be a normal day at the oasis. The only tribesman spared was the commander of the battalion. The afternoon he was brought before the tribal chieftains, who asked him why he had violated the tradition. The commander said that his men had been starving and thirsty, exhausted from many days of the battle, and had decided to take the oasis so as to be able to return to war. The tribal chieftain said he felt sorry for the tribesmen, but that the tradition was scared. He condemned the commander to death without honor, rather than being killed by bale or bullet. He was hanged from a dead palm tree, where his body twisted in the desert wind. The tribal chieftain called for the boy and presented him with 5 pieces of gold. He repeated his story about Joseph of Egypt and asked the boy to become the consular of the oasis. When the sun had set and the first stars made their appearance, the boy started to walk to the south. He eventually sighted a single tent, and a group of Arabs passing by told the boy that it was a place inhabited by Dennis, but the boy sat down and waited. Not until the moon was high did the alchemist ride into view. He carried 2 dead hogs over his shoulder. "I'm here," the boy said. "You shouldn't be here," the alchemist answered. "Or is it your personal ledger that brings you here? With the wars between the tribes, it's impossible to cross the desert, so I have come here." The alchemist dismounted from his horse and signaled that the boy should enter the tent with him. It was a tent like many at the oasis. The boy looked around for the ovens and other appeared used in alchemy, but saw none. There were only some books in a pile, a small cooking stove, and the carpets covered with mysterious designs. "Sit down." "Well, we have something to drink and eat there, the hawks," said the alchemist. The boy suspected that they were the same hawks he had seen on the day before, but he said nothing. The alchemist lighted the fire, and soon a delicious aroma filled the tent. It was better than the scent of the hookahs. "Why did you want to see me?" the boy asked. "Because of the omens," the alchemist answered. "The wind told me you would be coming and that you would need help." "It's not I," the wind spoke about. "It's the other foreigner, the Englishman. He's the one that's looking for you. He has other things to do first, but he's on the right track. He has begun to try understand the desert. And what about me?" When a person really desires something, all the universe conspires to help that person to realize his dream, said the alchemist. Aging the words of the old king, the boy understood. Another person was there to help him toward his personal legend. "So you are going to instruct me?" "No, you already know all you need to know. I am only going to point you in the direction of your treasure." "But there's a terrible war," the boy retired. "I know what's happening in the desert. I have already found my treasure. I have a camel, I have my mummy for the crystal shop, and I have 50 gold pieces. In my own country, I would be a rich man. But none of that is from my pyramids," said the alchemist. "I also have Fatima. She is a treasure greater than anything else I had won. She wasn't found at the pyramids either." They ate in silence. The alchemist opened a bottle and poured a red liquid into the boy's cup. It was the most delicious wine he ever had tasted. "Isn't wine prohibited here?" the boy asked. "It's not what enters man's mouth that's evil," said the alchemist. "It's what comes out of their mouths that is." The alchemist was a bit daunting, but as the boy drank the wine, he relaxed. After the finished eating, they sat outside the tent under the moon so brilliant it made the stars pale. "Drink and enjoy yourself," said the alchemist, noticing that the boy was feeling happier. "Rest well tonight, as if you were a warrior preparing for combat. Remember that wherever your heart is, there will find your treasure. You got to find the treasure, so that everything you have learned along the way can make sense. Tomorrow, sell your camel and buy a horse. Camels are traitorous. They walk thousands of spaces and never seem tired. Then, suddenly they kneel and die. But horses tire bit by bit. You always know how much I can ask of them, and when it's said that are about to die." The following night, the boy appeared at the alchemist's tent with a horse. The alchemist was ready, and he mounted his own stud and placed the falcon on his left shoulder. He said to the boy, "Show me where there is life out in the desert. Only those who can see such signs of life are able to find treasure." They began to ride out over the sands, with the moon lightening their way. "I don't know if I will be able to find life in the desert," the boy thought. "I don't know the desert that well yet." He wanted to say to the alchemist, but he was afraid of the man. They reached the rock place where the boy had seen the hawks in the sky, but now there was only silence and the wind. "I don't know how to find life in the desert," the boy said. I know that there is life here, but I don't know where to look. Life attracts life, the alchemist answered. And then the boy understood. He loosened the reins on his horse, who galloped forward over the rocks and sand. The alchemist followed as the boy's horse ran for almost half an hour. They could no longer see the palms of the oasis, only the giant moon above them, and its silver reflecting from the stones of the desert. Suddenly, for no apparent reason, the boy's horse began to slow. "There's life here," the boy said to the alchemist. "I don't know the language of the desert, but my horse knows the language of life." They dismounted, and the alchemist said nothing. Advancing slowly, they searched among the stones. The alchemist stopped abruptly and bent to the ground. There was a hole there among the stones. The alchemist put his hand into the hole and then his entire arm up to his shoulder. Something was moving there, and the alchemist's eyes, the boy could see only his eyes, thickened with his effort. His arm seemed to be battling whatever was in the hole. Then, with a motion that startled the boy, he withdrew his arm and leaped to his feet. In his hand, he grasped the snake by the tail. The boy leaped as well, but away from the alchemist. The snake fought frantically, making hissing sounds that shattered the silence of the desert. It was a cobra, whose venom could kill a person in minutes. "Watch out for his venom," the boy said, but even so the alchemist had put his hand in the hole and had surely already been bitten. His expression was calm. "The alchemist is 200 years old," the Englishman told him. "He must know how to deal with the snakes of the desert." The boy watched as his companion went to his horse and withdrew his scimitar. With his blade, he drew a circle in the sand, and then he placed the snake within it. The serpent relaxed immediately. "Not to worry," said the alchemist. "He won't leave the circle. You find life in the desert, the omen that I needed." Why was that so important? Because the pyramids are surrounded by the desert. The boy didn't want to talk about the pyramids. His heart was heavy and he had been melancholy since the previous night. To continue his search for the treasure meant that he had to be abandoned Fatima. "I'm going to guide you across the desert," the alchemist said. "I want you to stay at the oasis," the boy answered. "I found Fatima, and as far as I'm concerned, she is worth more than any treasure." "Fatima is a woman of the desert," said the alchemist. "She knows that men have to go away in order to return, and she already has her treasure. It's you. Now she expects that you will find what it is you're looking for. Well, what if I decided to stay? Let me tell you what will happen. You will be the concealer of the oasis. You have enough gold to buy many sheep and many camels. You will marry Fatima and you will both be happy for a year. You learn to love the desert and you get to know everyone on the 50,000 palms. You watch them as they grow, demonstrating how the world is always changing. And you get better and better at understanding the omens, because the desert is the best teacher. Sometimes, during the second year, you remember about the treasure. The omens will begin instantly to speak of it, and you try to ignore them. You use your knowledge for the warfare of the oasis and its inhabitants. The tribal chieftains will abbreviate what you do, and your camels will bring you wealth and power. During the year, the omens will continue to speak out of your treasure and your personal legend. You walk around night after night at the oasis, and Fatima will be unhappy because she feels it was she who interrupted your quest. But you will love her, and she return your love. You remember that she never asked you to stay, because a woman of the desert knows that she must await her man, so you won't blame her. but many times you have walked the sand of the desert, thinking that maybe you could have left, that you could have trusted more in your love for Fatima, because what kept you at the oasis was your own fear that you might never come back. At that point, the omens will tell you that your treasure is buried forever. Then, sometimes during the 4th year, the omens will abandon you because you stopped listening to them. The tribal chieftains will see that and you will be dismissed from your position as a concealer. But by then, you'll be rich, with many camels and great deal of merchandise. You spend the rest of your days knowing that you didn't propose your personal legend, and that it's now too late. You must understand that love never keeps a man from pursuing his personal legend. If he abandons that pursuit, it's because it wasn't true love. The love that speaks the language of the world. The alchemist erased the circle in the sand, and the snake slided away among the rocks. The boy remembered the crystal merchant who had always wanted to go to Mecca, and the Englishman in search of the alchemist. He thought of the woman who had trusted in the desert, and he looked out over the desert that had brought him to the woman he loved. They mounted their horses, and this time it was the boy who followed the alchemist back to the oasis. The wind brought the sound of the oasis to them, and the boy tried to hear Fatima's voice. But that night, as he had watched the cobra within the cycle, the strange horseman with the falcon on his shoulder had spoken of love and treasure, of the woman of the desert, and of his personal legend. "I'm going with you," the boy said, and he immediately felt peace in his heart. "Well, we will leave tomorrow before sunrise," was the alchemist's only response. The boy spent a sleepless night. 2 hours before dawn, he awoke, and one of the boys who slept in his tent and asked him to show him where Fatima lived. They went to the tent, and the boy gave his friend enough gold to buy a sheep. Then he asked his friend to go into the tent where Fatima was sleeping and to awaken her and tell her that he was waiting outside. The young Arab did as he was asked and was given enough gold to buy yet another sheep. "Now, leave us alone," said the boy at the young Arab. The Arab returned to his tent to sleep, proud to have helped the concealer of the oasis and happy at having enough money to buy himself some sheep. Fatima appeared at the entrance to the tent. The two walked out among the palms. The boy knew that it was a violation of the tradition, but that it didn't matter to him. "I'm going away," he said, "and I want you to know that I'm coming back. I love you." "Don't say anything," Fatima interrupted. "One is loved because one is loved. No reason is need for loving." But the boy continued. "I had a dream, and I met with a king. I sold crystal and crossed the desert. And because the tribes declared war, I went to the well seeking alchemists. So I love you because the entire universe conspired to help me find you." The two embraced. It was the first time either had touched the other. "I will be back," the boy said. "Before this, I always looked to the desert with longing," said Fatima. "Now it will be the hope. My father went away one day, but he returned to my mother, and he has always come back since then." They said nothing else. They walked a bit farther among the palms, and then the boy left her at the entrance of her tent. "I will return, just as your father come back to your mother," he said. He saw Fatima's eyes were filled with tears. "You're crying?" "I'm a woman of the desert," she said, averting her face. "But above all, I'm a woman." Fatima went back to her tent. and when daylight came, she went out to the chores she had done for years. But everything had changed. The boy was no longer at the oasis, and the oasis would never, ever again have the same meaning it had only yesterday. It would no longer be a place with 50,000 palm trees and 300 wells. Where the pilgrims arrived, revealed at the end of their long journeys, from that day on, the oasis would be an empty place for her. From that day on, it was the desert that would be important. She would look to it every day and would try to guess which star the boy was falling in search of his treasure. She would have to send her kisses on the wind, hoping that the wind would touch the boy's face and would tell him that she was alive, that she was waiting for him, a woman awaiting a courageous man in search of his treasure. From that day on, the desert would represent only one thing to her, the hope for his return. Don't think about what you left behind, the alchemist said to the boy as they began to ride across the sand of the desert. Everything is written in the soul of the world, and there it will stay forever. Men dream more about coming home than about leaving, the boy said. He was already accustomed to the desert silence. If what one finds is made of pure matter, it will never spoil, and one can always come back. If what you had found was only a moment of light, like the explosion of a star, you would find nothing on your return. The man was speaking the language of alchemy, but the boy knew that he was referring to Fatima. It was difficult not to think about what he had left behind. The desert with its endless monotony, but him to dream. The boy could still see the palm trees, the wells, and the face of the woman he loved. He could see the Englishman at his experiments and the camel driver who was a teacher without realizing it. Maybe the alchemist has never been in love, the boy thought. The alchemist rode in front, with a falcon on his shoulder. The bird knew the language of the deserts well, and whenever they stopped, he flew off in search of game. On the first day, he returned with a rabbit, and on the second with 2 birds. At night, they spread their sleeping gear and kept their fires hidden. The desert's nights were cold and were becoming darker and darker as the phases of the moon passed. They went on for a week, speaking only of the partition they needed to follow in order to avoid the battles between the tribes. The war continued, and times at the wind carried the sweet, sickly smell of blood. Battles had been fought nearby, and the wind reminded the boy that there was the language of the omens, always ready to show him what his eyes had failed to observe. On the 7th day, the alchemist decided to make a camp earlier than usual. The falcon flew off to find game, and the alchemist offered his water container to the boy. "You are almost at the end of your journey," said the alchemist. "I congratulate you for having passed your personal legend." "And you told me nothing along the way," said the boy. "I thought you were going to teach me some of the things you know." "A while ago, I rode through the desert with a man who had books and alchemy, but I wasn't able to learn anything from them." "There's only one way to learn," the alchemist answered. "It is through action. Everything you need to know, you have learned through a journey. You need to learn only one thing more." The boy wanted to know what it was, but the alchemist was searching the horizon looking for the falcon. "Why are you called the alchemist?" "Because that's what I am." "And what went wrong when the alchemists tried to make gold and were unable to do so?" They were looking only for gold, his companion answered. They were seeking the treasure of their personal legend without wanting actually to live out their personal legend. What is that? I still need to know, the boy asked. But the alchemist continued to look to the horizon, and finally the falcon returned with their meal. They dug a hole and lit their fire in it, so that the light of the flames would not be seen. I'm an alchemist simply because I'm an alchemist, he said, as prepared the meal. I learned the science from my grandfather, who learned from his father, and so on, back to creation of the world. In those times, the masterwork could be written simply on an emerald, but men began to reject simple things and to write tracts, interpretation, and philosophical studies. They also began to feel that they knew a better way than others had. Yet the emerald tablet is still alive today. What was written in the emerald, the boy wanted to know. The alchemist began to draw in the sand and completed his drawing in less than 5 minutes. As he drew, the boy thought of the old king and the plaza where they had met the day. It seemed as if it had taken place years and years ago. This is what was written in the emerald tablet, said the alchemist when he finished. The boy tried to read what was written in the sand. It's a code, said the boy, a bit disappointed. It looks like what I saw in the Englishman books. No, the alchemist answered. It's look like the flight of those 2 hawks. It can be understood by reason alone. The emerald tablet is direct path to the soul of the world. The wise man understood that this natural world is only an imagine and copy of paradise. The existence of the world is simply guaranteed that there exists a world that is perfect. God created the world so that through its visible objects man could understand his spiritual teachings and the marvels of the wisdom. That's what I mean by action. Should I understand the emerald tablet? The boy asked. Perhaps. If you were in a laboratory of alchemy, this would be the right time to study, the best way to understand the emerald tablet. But you are in the desert, so immerse yourself in it. The desert will give you an understanding of the world. In fact, anything on the face of the earth will do that. You don't even have to understand the desert. All you have to do is contemplate a simple grain of sand, and you will see in it all marvelous creations. How do I immerse myself in the desert? Listen to your heart. It knows all things because it came from the soul of the world, and it will one day return there. This was part 7 of The Alchemist, written by Paulo Coelho. Make sure that you click on the notification bell to get the notification for the next part to come, because this book has still a few pages. Also feel invited to follow, subscribe, click on the notification bell, and comment with your thoughts about this part 7. I am always looking forward to answer your comments. As well, make sure that you also listen to part 1 to 7, because it is a very amazing book to read between the lines, and it has so much wisdom where you can lean on and think about. My name is ASMR Katz, and this is my YouTube channel where I read not only books, I have a lot more in stocks. So if you are curious, feel free to click yourself through my videos and explore the satisfying sound of ASMR. No matter where you are right now on this planet, have an amazing time and relax and enjoy yourself.